Hello and welcome to Cardiff Central podcast. As ever, it's me, Harley, in the hot seat. Just a quick reminder to like and subscribe. We're on 208 YouTube followers. We're trying to get up to 250 next time for the next thing. Basically, then so we can remove the video of Lee doing a Beyonce dance. I'm joined as ever by Carwyn and Dan. How are you both, my friends?
All good,
Uh,
Tap.
yeah, not too
Yeah,
bad. Not too bad at all.
excellent. So obviously the senior side didn't play this weekend, aren't playing next weekend. So it's but surprisingly we do still have a reasonable amount of stuff to talk about. So start off with some news. So first of all, we've got an extra scrum half. We've signed Gonzalo Bertrand from the Dragons. I'm sure at least until the end of the season, I believe. To me, it's a sign that makes sense. Bevan having just Bevan and Aubrey is a bit of a precarious situation. And with 50 Argentinian caps, he's a decent bit of experience.
Good scrum half.
Yeah,
Really solid. Does the defensive side as well. He's represented his country at a World Cup semi final. Has started rather as well. That's more importantly. I think he's a really solid addition. I'm surprised that he's been allowed to make that move a little bit from a Dragons perspective. Um, but on the flip side, it's a really good signing for Cardiff. There's absolutely nothing to not like about it. It makes sense. It seems perfect for us. Um, or and yeah, it seems like a no lose situation really. I can't see any awkwardness in that at all. If it was to stop a youngster like Jamie Hill getting game time, you'd say, "Oh, but we'd like to see Jamie Hill get into game time." But Aubrey's not a youngster anymore. It doesn't really bother me either way. Really, I think it's a really good signing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that entirely. It's and obviously it's a replacement for Thomas on the short term, so it's one international quality nine replaced by another. It's sort of surprisingly competent from a Cardiff point of view, really. It concerns me that we're making these sort of good decisions. But I guess from a Dragons perspective, it sounds like he's on the way out at the end of the season. It shifts a wage bill off them and gives them. I noticed that they re-signed Che Hope and Morgan Lloyd. They're two young nines. So their season's done pretty much. So it gives them a chance to blood their two youngsters. I think for us then money wise, I'm assuming we've had some sort of insurance payout on for Thomas as he got injured on international duty. So we got a bit of cash there. And I think we're probably, although our season is done in terms of competitiveness, like it's outside that we make the playoffs. I do think there's a bit more in it for us in terms of trying to win at Ulster and at Edinburgh, trying to finish the season on a high after what's been a positive season, but just hasn't quite had the results. So yeah, works great all round, I think.
yep. In other news, Falatay's back training. Great stuff. Won't dwell on that. Maybe talk a bit more when we go into the squad later. In news from sort of around the Cardiff area, Ponte have confirmed that their temporary coaching trio are now going to be permanent. So congratulations to Dikomedes, Garen Smith, former Blue and Black legend, and Christian Parker for all their hard work and seem to have gotten Ponte out of a little bit of a rut. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about them when we do the Premiership rundown. And then the last bit of news is we've heard from head office. CEO Richard Holland has sent out his latest infrequent, because I can't call them regular updates. His latest irregular update. Just talking about the cat just transition move. Have you both read it? What are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it was an update, wasn't it? I can't you can't complain that they are updating. Probably interesting things that came out of it. I thought the mention of trying to bolster the pathway staff was good, and I think they've advertised for a few like strength and conditioning and analysis posts, which is great. Griff when he came on here a couple of weeks ago was saying that they're sort of down to bare bones, so any extra help I'm sure is appreciated there. Sounds like one or two positive bits around the Arms Park being refurbished to a degree, just short term bits. I don't exactly know what they are, but
I have
apparently
heard
that.
one bit. I do
Oh, go
have
on.
one exclusive bit from a friend of the pod, David Allen. He told me my wish to have hot drink facilities in the Southwest Terrace bar are going in next season, and I'm so happy.
Well, every little helps, I guess. But I mean, that's all they can do until they secure sort of long-term future and a major refurbishment of it. But I do agree with what it said, actually, that the matchday experience has improved quite markedly over the last sort of year to 18 months in terms of like the pack bar openings being really good, and there's certainly fewer complaints about queuing times around the ground now for bars and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see what this street food, I can't remember what the word they used to describe it, Dickie, like a container almost type thing. But yeah, then it wasn't packed with info, but it was nice to hear from the suits.
Going.
Yeah, not much to add. It was, yeah, I suppose there's two ways of looking at it. You would love you're always going to come out of those wanting more info, and you're never going to get all the info because they can't tell you everything, and they'd be stupid to think they can tell you everything. But yeah, I suppose it's one of those things where you are hearing from them, but perhaps it would be nice to hear a little bit more, especially when you think of other people in similar roles in other regions that are a bit more open, perhaps. Um, but on the flip side, then I quite like that it's done through the fans rather than on Twitter. I think that I do actually quite like that, even though we heap praise on David Buttress and Lads Bradley for coming out on Twitter. I think sometimes they can get too much out on there rather than these streamlined, like, I'm going to take time, sit down, write a proper newsletter explaining what's going on and what we can actually say and cannot say, and put it in clarity. So yeah, there's so many different ways of looking at it. I just personally think it'd be great to have more of it and more clarity and more explaining in future. But it is a start. It is a starting point, and if this is the bare minimum, then I'm hopeful for the future.
So the thing for me is I just would like it to be more regular, more. I don't know, so particularly in weeks like this where we don't have luck. So if they're not pushing the rags, we haven't got like the under the age grade team to push. Like, let's try and just get something to keep the buzz, keep everyone engaged. That's it for the news as far as I've been able to trawl through. So if we move on we'll do the Premiership update first. So obviously Merthyr narrowly losing out to Llandovery in the Premiership Cup. Cardiff had a, just like a reasonably comfortable win of 77-7. Do you want to go into a little bit more detail there, Colin?
There's not much more to add, is there? Yeah, no, Premiership Cup final. It was a tough one for Merthyr. High obviously put a real battler with Llandovery, who have been flying all season, and it was a good performance in parts. Obviously, discipline and certain parts weren't the best, maybe, and that probably cost them in the end. But it's when are Merthyr likely to get back in one? I don't know what the situation is with the cup next season. Not entirely sure. I don't know if that has come out and I've missed it. But for next season, with Merthyr not being in the EDC, you'd assume that they'd be playing against lower level opposition and be struggling to compete against the best teams on a regular basis. Even though I know in the news there was mention of getting these friendlies together with Cardiff and Ponty in the newsletter, but how frequent are those going to be in the future? I doubt it. So it was it's a shame for them that they couldn't end this period before the EDC on a high. But yeah, as you say, Cardiff 77-7 against Carmarthen. Ebervale also got a convincing victory over Aberavon. Newport only won 31-24 at Neath, which I felt was like only winning by 7 points the way Newport are flying is a bit of a disappointment by their standards now, isn't it? And then Pontypool won quite convincingly at home to RGC. But that leads us quite nicely to next week because Cardiff do play Merthyr. So yeah, possibly one of the last times for a while, at least, we're going to see a competitive game between the two, which is so definitely Pat Cap, as we've mentioned before, about to get that game. And then yeah, Pontypridd travel to RGC for the other fixture in the region. That both games are on 2:30 on Saturday. So look forward to those two. But yeah, there's a fair few decent games. No big stellar games apart from the Cardiff Merthyr one, really, which is it's a lot riding on that. Both pride and, well, I assume if Cardiff win, that is the end of Merthyr's hopes as well for top four finish.
Anything you want to add there, Dan?
Up the rags. That's all for me.
Yes, right. So we're going to move. So I said, although Cardiff Rugby aren't playing next week, Wales women are. They are away to Ireland women in. Is it what was Musgrave Park? The Virgin Media Musgrave Park or whatever they've sold
Yeah.
out for to call it this time.
Yeah, it is.
Any thoughts on that? Is it? I mean, this probably has a lot more pressure on it given the result of the Scotland game. Do you still see Wales winning?
Tough one. Ireland have been noticeably better in this Six Nations so far. Particularly, I thought the first half against France, they were actually really impressive. They gave France a real run for their money. But yeah, I think I do make Wales probably still slight favourites, but it is a pressure game, and I think that's maybe the question mark for Wales is how they react to properly going into a game where they are slight favourites, but there is massive pressure on them to win as well. I don't have with the sort of WXV, and they were probably second favourites for a lot of those games. And then the Australia one where maybe we weren't favourites, but there was a bit of pressure to get a result there and they didn't. So I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen there. I think selection will be very interesting. Obviously, Cunningham has, I wouldn't say he's mixed the team up as such in the first weeks, but he's tried to develop a full 23 approach where we saw Georgia Evans on the bench in round one, and then we saw Tuipulotu and Bevan on the bench in round two. So whether he goes sort of all out full strongest 15 and tries to put them under pressure straight away, or whether he continues with this rotational and trying to be strong in the final quarter approach. But yeah, I think I've seen enough from Wales in flashes to suggest that they can and should win this weekend. It's just about putting the elements of the defence that we saw against Scotland and then the elements of some of the attacking phase play we saw against England together. And that if we attack like we did against England, against Ireland, there will be more opportunities than we got at Bristol, certainly.
So, Karen, Dan sort of touched on selection there. Would you do much to change up from the England game, or would you keep very vaguely the same? Other than maybe bringing in a few of the injured people who weren't out injured.
Keely Powell, I'd like to see her start 100%. Whether that's at fullback. Yeah, at fullback, basically. That's where she's strongest, and I'd like to see her back there. I just think she adds so much in attack. She's got brilliant feet. She counterattacks well. She also really added a dimension as a first receiver, I thought, against England, and I really liked that. And if they manage to get two first receivers, as in both sides of the ruck, playing off both sides of the ruck, whereas opposed to previously it's been forwards one side, flaky the other. It could be quite interesting. I think that could add something to the game. I think, as we mentioned last week, I think Georgia Evans is a must start, and I hope she does start this week as well. Yeah, it's a weird one with Alicia Butchers. Do you start Georgia at 6? I think probably you start Georgia in the second row, which gives a space for a Kate Williams or an Alicia Butchers. I think this game probably suits Butchers a bit more than last week's does. It likely to be a bit more expansive. Ireland probably know that they can't compete with Wales up front. That has been historically where Wales have dominated Ireland, is that scrum, maul, that power game that Wales have been so strong in the last couple of years. So, look, it's in terms of pressure, in terms of the game, I think it's huge. I think the loss against Scotland, what it did was just really reinforce what we were all thinking might have happened, and that the three other countries, but especially Scotland and Ireland, because Italy have been there or thereabouts for both years, but Scotland and Ireland have caught up, and I think that was reinforced by that result. I don't think it was a surprise result. I think Wales were favourites, but I don't think it was one where we all went, "Oh my God, I can't believe Wales have lost to Scotland." It was almost a reiteration of what we'd feared or felt might happen. And I think if Wales lose out in Ireland, I do think then questions need to be asked, serious questions. I think questions need to be asked anyway of where is the Welsh team currently, but if they lose out in Ireland, I think serious questions need to be asked. The immediate thing people will start saying is the coach the right person or is the right man? I personally think Johan's done a very good job, but it's just at the moment the results or well the lack of results is a bit worrying. Since the USA performance, which was brilliant, performances haven't been there either for a lot of the time. So I think that's the difficulty as well. That I think England was a better performance. So in terms of upward trends of performances, hopefully it continues to rise because Ireland are a beatable side, but if they give them an inch, Ireland will take it, and 100% they've been better than Six Nations, as Dan said. Um, I I do think Wales will win though. After being so negative, I do think Wales will win, but it's just one of those things where they need to a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting you talk about like with I say George Evans being the sort of a shoe-in to start, and I said I thought Kate Williams played really well, and I really like the impact Alicia Butcher's had on. One thing that was struggling for Wales a little bit was line out, and as brilliant as Abby Fleming's been, do we need to bring Natalia John in to start and have Fleming on the bench? Do you think?
I would. I thought John was one of our best players against England, actually, and not just line-out wise. She carried really well in the second half as well. So I think that's an area where do you keep John back as stronger off the bench, or do you just chuck her in? And I think if I were picking the team, which is easy to say when I've got no pressure on, but I would go strong from the start and bring Kelsey Jones back at a hooker, and I bring Natalia John into the second row. I keep Kate Williams personally because I do wonder if Butcher's best position is going to be bench now going forward, which is a weird thing to say, but there are players who I think it's a bit of a cliche it's turned into, but it is a 23-person game now, and like I think there are players who just their best position is coming on 25, 30 minutes to go and really making an impact. And there's no harm in that. And I think sometimes people can get caught up in, oh, they were good off the bench, then let's start them. And then they're not as effective from the start. It's been this sort of thing with the Wales men's 9 position for a couple of years where the starting 9 gets criticised for being slow, and then the replacement 9 comes on and looks really quick because they're fresher than everybody else, and then they start and then they get criticised, and you just end up with this wheel of death where it's Hardy, Davis, Williams just on a massive loop. So
It goes back further than that, Dan.
Well, it does, yeah, but
Yeah.
certainly in the last couple of years.
I remember Mike Phillips being vilified week in, week out, and Richie Reese being, oh, look at the speed of ball of Richie Reese, and Richie Reese was starting out a shocker, and then.
So I would, but yeah, I would keep Butchers on the bench and give Williams a chance to properly embed herself for the rest of this tournament and just see how she goes. But yeah, I think the line out will be better. Looking at the weather forecast, it's not too bad in Cork on Saturday. So if they can give themselves a chance, because the Welsh maul is actually a real weapon as well. Yeah. And I do think we were overcomplicating it against England. If we just go back to basics, call it to the front and push Ireland back a couple of yards every time, then there's no harm in, you don't have to play beautiful rugby. Just be, go back to what Wales women have been quite good at, which is being quite physical and direct and get the result. You don't get bonus points for attractive scores. So.
No.
So I was going to say, I'll put your feet to the fire now. Any predictions for the game?
Can I just jump in on second rows quickly? Sorry, I just wanted to say how gutted I am to see Gwen Crabb picking another injury up. Like, it's so rough for these girls, the knee injuries. It's just beyond belief. So, yeah, gutted for her. Because, yeah, as you mentioned, Natalia as well coming back, and Butcher's coming back, Hayley Powell coming back. It's like just this constant cycle that they're going through. But in terms of predictions, Wales should win by 6 or 7 or more. I think it might be closer. Wales win by 4, maybe 5. I'm gonna say. But on paper, I think Wales are the stronger side, even though I'm not 100% sure with Ireland's selection at the moment. But I do think they will be able to select all their sevens players, will they? Dan, do you know that for certain?
No, the only thing I've seen with Ireland is that, and the name of the woman will massively escape me, but they've recalled somebody who was quite influential who had like refused to play when David Nucifora was head of performance, and that now he's jump. I think I don't know whether he's pushed or he's jumping at the end of the season. She's come back in, and yeah, her name will.
She's the Exeter hooker.
It could well
when
be.
the other podcast I listened to was talking about it, and the name was I had the name in my
Yeah,
head,
it's
and that's
something
Maloney.
again.
Maloney.
That's it. Yeah, that's one. So I saw a lot of Irish women rugby Twitter people who were very, very pleased that she was back. So yeah, they will be stronger again from the team, whether they've got the sevens players or not. But I'm gonna give Wales a slight advantage. I'm gonna say Wales by 9.
Yeah. I think the thing with the sevens is because Ireland have already qualified for the World Cup, not World Cup, the Olympics. The pressure's off, so they're not demanding that that their sevens players have to come back because they've got enough for the squad to carry on the rest of the fixtures.
Yeah,
because I think for this, I think like the whole of the seven series ends up it's going to be whoever wins the gold medal gets the title as well, or something baffling like that.
because that is what's been happening, isn't it? Historically, is we have a couple of times faced Ireland when they've either had their sevens and then lost them, and it has been a real upheaval for them because you are talking a big proportion of especially their backs, and some very very good players in that back line. So I hope that they're all playing, even though that doesn't help the Wales cause, but it does help it in terms of the spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think considering that, I mean, I don't know about if you two agree, but I find Wales's defence out wide has been really ropey so far this tournament, and I feel like having stars like that, like Bain Parsons and like, that we're both being cut up. Whereas I feel like if that was a bit better, then I'm not sure the seven. If our wide defence was a little bit better, then I think we would have probably been a little bit less worried because it doesn't really affect the pack. The seventh players are more back three centres type positions. So I forget, I said on Wrap Wales by 3. Probably now I've been thinking about it a bit more. Probably leaning more towards Wales by 7. But either way, I still think it's going to be a Ireland and shout with a losing bonus point there, which would be great for them. Maybe not so for us. Right, so as we get into that,
just on that, sorry, just wanted to say on the weekend, I'm really interested to see how Scotland go against England.
That's
really interested.
Where is it?
It's in Scotland.
I think it'll be Damhealth. They'll be playing.
Just really interested to see how they go because I think they've been hammered a couple of years, and I just want to see if the as you said, the yardstick for them has to be something like be competitive to 30, be competitive to 40. I think, it's going to be, they're not likely to win. Yeah, it's not beat around the bush. But, it's similar to what we were talking about with Wales, but they'll want to see a much bigger progression to what they've had. And I think this is a good, especially after the performance against France, they'll want to back that up against England.
And I was wrong. It's at the Hive Stadium, which I think is the big one now. That is Murrayfield. No, Hive is what was that Damhealth, isn't it? It's now the Hive.
Yeah, it's the little ropey one next
either
door.
Way, it's in Edinburgh. Right, anyway, so moving on. So Dan's going to go through a bit of he's been sort of looking at the come-ins and go-ins and has sort of got a rough picture of the what the squad's going to look like. So for the YouTube viewers, you can see the graphic. Dan, take it away.
Yeah, and if I'll put it on Twitter, it's at Cardiff Rugby Web. I'll probably stick it up tonight, but it's tomorrow in sort of podcastception land. So as last year, over the summer, I did a sort of graphic of trying to see if we were actually going to cobble together a squad, looking at sort of players in each position and who was contracted, if we didn't know or if we knew they were heading off. So I put it together again for this summer, which is in a slightly healthier spot where we looking like we will have a squad, which is a much better starting point. There's a lot of unknowns on there. So the players in green are ones either who we've announced during the course of this season are signed a new deal, or who we have announced a signing for next season, or in the case of Tina Stabia, that when we signed him last summer, we confirmed it was a sort of long-term, in inverted commas, contract. We've had a couple of people announce that they're definitely leaving, and then the rest are unknown. Even if, you know, we had some players like Teddy Williams, when we get onto the locks, who signed a new contract last summer, but I'm not sure what position we were in to sort of offer people really long-term stuff last summer, or what sort of level of contract we were offering. So whether we sort of, they signed a contract and then we promised we'd come back to them this season when we're in a slightly better financial spot to sort of bring their wages up a bit. So I'm happy to go through position by position, and we can offer some thoughts. If we loose heads, the first one, obviously losing Carey, Domachowski signed a new deal just before Christmas, and then the only two others are youngsters there. We've got Reece Barrett, who I've put as unknown. I think he's likely to still be here next season, though. Griff was talking about him a couple of weeks ago, wasn't he? So, and then Cam Tyler Grocott, who is first year academy, played mostly for Glamorgan Wanderers in the first half of the season, played fairly regularly for the Rags in the second half of the season, but I would imagine will stay largely with the Rags in the EDC next season. I don't think we'll see him hugely in the first team. A sort of, I think it's becoming more well known now that we have signed Joe Cowell, the Cardiff Met former captain, who he played in the Misfits game against Toulouse, I think, didn't he? But then didn't play against Harlequins. So he'll come in as a loose head, although he's played a tight head a bit for the Met this season, but I just he'll be largely a loose head for us. He's trained with the first team a bit, but I don't know about you two. I would suggest we probably need one more senior option in there.
The one that interests me is Barrett, I think, because like you said, I'm pretty. I'd be very surprised if he's not here next season. And I am also surprised at how little game time he's had this season, because whenever you talk to anyone about him within the Cardiff setup, there's always a lot of praise. There's always a lot of potential, real high ceiling potential. I understand that there's two international props ahead of him, and I do fully appreciate the fact that through luck at times they've both been fit pretty much all the season, haven't they? You know, which is very unlikely when we come to other positions. But they have been fit all season, or for the majority of it. He just hasn't had that game time. But also, when he has been on the bench, he hasn't been brought on as regularly as I'd have thought. I really hope he can kick on next season. So in terms of, it's probably depth and competition for that bench spot, if we're honest, isn't it? In that and that competition for a starting spot when Domachowski is away with Wales. So it's going to be an interesting one. Whether I'd be interested to know if you think they should bring in a name is probably a bit of an exaggeration, but an established first choice loose head, and then keep Barrett as a tertiary option or second option when Domachowski's away, along with Cowell, or if you think they should just find competition for those two as well. Because in my head, if you're bringing in another young prop, you're just creating three players really playing that are exactly the same level, playing for the same position.
Yeah, I think it's spot on there. I said I think we do maybe not necessarily an international quality loose head, but a loose head who is decent. You know, is gonna week in week out sort of option. So you sort of not Bevan Rod, but that sort of his first choice in Premiership isn't. It might be occasionally jumping up into international caps, but not really. I think that'd be the sort of level, but whether we can afford that is another story. Or do we look into somewhere like the South African squads are shedding some because they don't have the Curry. They don't have to have as large a squad for the Curry Cup anymore. So maybe you might be able to pick up a sort of third, fourth choice loose head there, which definitely do the job for us. Just hold. If all you want is someone to be on the bench / starting whilst in the weeks Domachevsky's away. Yeah, a nice Georgian would be great, but they're not as cheap as they used to be.
I think that's the caveat about all of this discussion is what we can afford within the sort of wage bill and marquee players, and whether we're going to bump it up a bit. I think the big question mark at Loosehead is where they see Cowell, I think. Because he'll be, I don't know, he's finishing university now. He'd be 20, 22, 23, somewhere around there. He's played for Wales under-20s. He's been regular at Buck Super Rugby. He's been with the first team squad for a little. I mean, he was travelling reserve since sort of Christmas time for us. So he'll have been on some sort. I think they finished their season now. They met. I think they got knocked out last week, didn't they? So he'll have been on a pretty decent S&C program to sort of come out of university into senior pro rugby for 6 to 9 months somewhere by the time the start of next season comes around. If they think he is a really viable second choice option, they might just run with that of Domachevsky, Cowell, Barrett as your three and not look to go in there. But I think that is the question mark about how pro ready they think Cowell is to step in there. Slide across to hooker. I don't think there's much discussion here, to be honest. I've put obviously Belcher and Evan Lloyd have had announced new contracts. I think Daniel probably is staying. I'd have thought. I think he was one who signed a contract last summer as well. Whether they sort of up his contract or offer a new one. I think Dav Hughes is probably not on a huge amount of money after coming from Jersey's demise. I thought he looked pretty handy off the bench at Racing, which is the only game I can immediately recall that he's played in. But
played recently, didn't he? Didn't he play in one of the games?
Did he play Leinster potentially as well?
Yeah, he played in one of
Leinster, and again, he was fine.
So
he was exactly what you want in third, fourth
he's a
choice.
good player.
If they're all contracted, I'm happy with hooker there. I don't think we need to push anyone else through. We got Tom Howe, who will probably be in the senior academy next season, who looks a decent player for Wales under 18s. I think that's pretty solid there.
I think tight head's an interesting one because it's one where we were probably in the most shit last season. We've ended up with a decent. With, so Azarati we know is staying.
Yeah,
I can't imagine Littrick and Parker moved over on much less than a 2-year deal.
Yeah,
Rajan will go with them. I actually thought Littrick's fine, and I don't know what it all comes down to the terms of when they last signed, doesn't it? But I think Will Davies-King he's someone who Sherratt thinks he can build the squad around. And having a nice big bulky front row, as we've found with Carey, is always helpful.
There's question marks over a couple of them. Davies-King, Littrick could be great, but not 100% showing it yet. Littrick's been all right, to be fair, when he's played, but he probably needs a run now towards the end of the season. He was in some of the pictures of training this week, but I don't know. Davies-King is flattering to deceive a little bit, I think. He's big. And he's got all the thing. He's obviously late to rugby, to pro rugby. I think he's come sort of university, Ponty, Cardiff. There is years for him to develop. He's still young as a prop. Parker's been an interesting one in that he looks pretty good. He's got experience. Obviously, the red card was a disappointment, and then picking up the injury was the real killer for him. But yeah, if they're all contracted, I don't think we need to bring anyone else in. But there's definitely Davies-King and Parker and to a degree Littrick have got a little point to prove there. If they're all going to be out of contract next summer, then that might be somewhere where they think, right, we'll stick with as is for now. But I mean, it is so crucial, tight head. There's a reason that tight heads command so much money at the top end, and to anchor the scrum is massive, especially for Cardiff, where we're not massive in the top 5.
Yeah, I was just going to say on Will Davies-King, I think he's actually improved this season. I think he's really. If I'm honest, I was very surprised that he got into that World Cup training squad. I think that's me being perhaps more polite than.
I think he was surprised as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Surprised is the word I'll stick with. but I think he has improved a lot this year. And I do like Litterick. Parker, I feel so sorry for. I really can't put it to it. He got a tackle horrendously wrong, got injured. He's had a horrible season. I can only imagine his season after moving. I don't know what his contract is, but for his sake, I hope he's on a 2-year deal, because if you're Cardiff, and I mean and I mean this in the greatest respect, if you're Cardiff and you're looking to cost cut, it's a pretty obvious one there, because how little game time he's had, how little opportunities he's had, and the performances perhaps when he's had the opportunity haven't been that great, largely due to he's trying to do too much or coming back from injury and rusty. It's been horrible for him. So I do hope for his case that he's got a 2-year contract, because he I think he does deserve the chance to prove a point, that he is more than a bit able to play at this level.
Yeah.
Lock, they're all orange at the moment. So we've got Seb, Tamani, Thornton, Teddy. I've just realised as well, I've left Ben Donnell off this. I'll amend that. But I'm pretty sure he's staying next season, because they did that little video the other day, didn't they, where they were sort of rounding up who we've announced so far, because people were asking them for more announcements. And they include
That was me.
no names, no names.
Call a spade, Dan. Call it out.
But they included Ben Donnell as announced as a signing in that, so I assume he's staying for next season if that's the case. But I'd have thought Teddy is contracted. He was one of the ones who signed last summer. I think we'd have heard if he wasn't by now, because I imagine there'd be clubs sort of ringing up about Teddy. You don't get many second rows like that coming through.
He's also clearly someone. Sorry, he's also clearly someone who Sherratt wants to build certainly the pack around. So I feel like that's someone he would offer a multi-year deal.
I think
Probably
Tamani,
similar with Seb. Tamani, I think, is one we're probably going to lose.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That about he's obviously massive, and when he plays, he offers something. He's playing fewer games this season. He is a bit more injured. I imagine he's not on small change, having come from France and with the sort of background that he has internationally. Is now the right time to move on from Tamani, or is it time or is he, if he says I only want 1 more year and then I'll call it, do you just give him one more year?
I think it's a bit like that. The big thing with Nick Williams towards the end, it was a case of managing his load, and like the old, I love the old Cardiff Blues Brothers chant of always take Nick Williams with you and to everywhere you go, and it's like he only plays home games. I think it's going to depend, because we've not really been using him as a second row. I think maybe because with some of the players we've got coming through in the back row, maybe it's time. But I think it will depend on someone who we're going to bring up when we go onto the back row. If we keep hold of them, then I think we need to lose Tamani and maybe just look for a decent. And apparently the reports are that we have been in the market for a nice big second row from South Africa, which I think will just help take some pressure off having a big bulky carrier. Someone's going to hit like a train in defence as well. Takes that pressure, particularly with Teddy's going to spend more time in Wales camps holding tackle backs. That's the thing. I think the other three, I said Thornton and Seb, I think are going to be quite interesting ones as well. Because I said Thornton's been around a while since we got him from the Ospreys. At times, has been key to our lineup actually looking competent. Seb no longer in Wales picture really. Is he going to stay at his home clubs, or are you going to try and look for a move elsewhere? And again, I don't know, because I'm sure Seb signed last season as well.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Seb, to be honest. I'll say that first and foremost. But I know he's got a young family, and I know he's settled here with a young family, and you can't read too much into that, because obviously people do move when they've got young families. But I would be surprised if he moved. I think the time Seb was more likely to move was a number of years ago with the Scarlets rumours that happened back then. But yeah, with Tamani, I personally, there's 2 ways of looking at it. You speak about a player that you've got to manage their workload, and I think with smaller budgets, you sometimes can't afford to do that. And I don't mean that to, he's been brilliant for Cardiff, and I would be stunned if he's in a Cardiff shirt next season. But I am already stunned that Sam Luisi's in going to be a Scarlet shirt next season. So there is the element of these guys are setting down roots, and they want to they sometimes say, do you know what? Actually, I'd really like to say, and I'm prepared to. Maybe I don't know what they'd offer to him. I've got absolutely no clue, but he might even want to take a pay cut and be willing to take a pay cut to stay at Cardiff, depending on circumstances. But it's as you mentioned, I doubt he's on small change. I suspect it would involve taking a pay cut should he stay. So yeah, look, it's one of those really with Tamani in terms of positionally. If he's not going to play second row and he's going to play eight, what do you do? Mackenzie Martin, do you stay right? Mackenzie Martin's our eight for next season as well, and rotating with well, yeah, who we're going to talk about in a second. Dan, go on, lead us on.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think the summary is that you got Teddy, Seb, brackets, New South African, close brackets, Thornton as your main four locks. You've got Donnell and Shane Lewis Hughes as your backups. I think that's a really good lock sort of core there. I think then once you've sorted everything else out, if there's a bit of money left and Timani's happy with that money, then you sort of go, well, that's fine, you can stay. But I think if it's anything more than that, then yeah, you kind of move on. And moving on to Lupe Faletau. He's back, he's in training. Shout out to my gran, who he lives around the corner with, and has claimed that she helped him back because he runs up and down the hill by her house. So it's her encouragement that has managed to get him back fit.
What, in the sense of he's trying to get away from your gran?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Because I get random photos of him running up and down the hill. The suggestion is that he and Josh Adams, who we come on to later, is contracted until next season, the end of next season. I don't know how true or otherwise that is, but he's obviously when the last rugby agreement ended and this one came in, there's no such thing as sort of getting 80% worth of payments for these top players anymore. So we're footing a lot of what is presumably around £400,000 worth of salary at the top end of the old wage banding. He has not played at all for us this season yet. I think that's correct, isn't he? He wasn't fit after the World Cup. So would you keep him? Yes or no?
It's going to be one of those. It's one of those ones where, like, when Faletau plays, he is worth every penny because he's Faletau. Are we going to get enough of him? Like, is this just going to be that one freak injury? It seems like, at least from what Gatland said, is he is not interested in having Faletau play for Wales for the next year or so. He wants to manage him, and if he's fit enough for the World Cup, then he's basically going to chuck him in that last year if he needs the 8. So we're probably going to lose Mackenzie Martin more than that. And actually having a big, experienced head like that, almost like with Josh Turnbull. The only problem is I've found is whenever Faletau has been sort of given that leadership role, because he's quite a quiet, reserved person by nature, it doesn't necessarily work. I don't know if it helped. He actually does train them up really well, but at least as a lead on-field leader, he's not really that. Follow me. He's not like Alice Jenkins. He'll take the time to explain plays. And it is, again, it's that harsh calculation of how much are we getting per game? How much, per game, and is that worth it? Like with the rumours are like, he's signing for Leinster and he might only play 5 games. And you're like, well, £100,000 a game? If you win a Champions Cup and the URC, is it worth it? Yes. If you don't, then I don't know. And yeah, I think with the budget, I would love to keep Faletau. Even if he's just around the squad, or even if you sort of try to tempt him with a sort of reduced contract, but maybe you pay him as an academy coach part-time as well to sort of top up the money that way. Yeah, I said, for me, I say, again, similar, like once we sorted out, once we got the bare minimum everywhere, and then you're like, well, this is how much money we've got left. We've got Faletau, we've got Tamani, which one are we going to get more value for money out of? Because I feel like they're almost occupying a similar space, particularly with them both playing 8 primarily. Yeah, I mean, there are other players who might be pretended to leave, or might keep more. Keeping them back with Thomas Young. We don't know what his contract. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he only originally came on a 2 year, and he came back for Wales call, which never came. And frankly, Thomas Young has been far more value for money than Faletau has, certainly this season.
Carwyn, you keeping him?
You don't have to be diplomatic to try and say no. I'd say I want to get rid of a world-class player, but
that's basically where I'm at. I think I can see, Faletau is, in my opinion, one of the best players Wales have had over the last 20 years. But since I've been watching rugby, he's up there with the Shanes and Alan Wins. I really do think he's up there, and probably still doesn't get the credit he deserves. But it's just that value for money thing. It's the same thing we were debating with Tamani. Is if he's not going to be involved in Wales, that does change things a lot, because really Faletau's pattern has been be injured, get back fit, play a game for Cardiff, get into the Wales squad, get injured, go through recovery, come back with Cardiff, go to Wales, and it is just how it works, and it's frankly ridiculous that whenever he puts whatever jersey on, he's able to play to the standard he is, not be rusty. Occasionally in the last year he's been a bit more rusty, but he is still phenomenal where he's at. I personally think if he's going to be part of the Wales setup, then it doesn't make sense to keep him financially, and in terms of I don't know exactly what the deal is. I know it used to be 80%, and that it's planned to reduce. So I don't think it makes sense financially. I don't think it makes sense in that aspect. But if he's not going to be part of Wales, I think that does change the equation a bit more, that he's likely to play a bit more, that he's likely to be a part of the squad. And, as far as players that the likes of Alex Mann and Mackenzie Martin can learn from, there are far few better in the world. If I was to talk about the areas that I think Mackenzie Martin could improve on, I would say repeat efforts, work ethic around the park, probably defensively, like every young player in the world. Name me a better 8 for that than Faletau in terms of those things in general terms. So there are very few, if any. So in simple terms, I think it really depends on how much they can see that Faletau is going to be playing in a Cardiff shirt next season, and there has to be some form of not a risk assessment, that's not really the phrase, but a value for money assessment almost, of how much are you getting at for this player, how much are you expected. There's going to be, he's going to get injuries like every player, but especially because he has a history of it. But if he is a fully fit player not playing international rugby, what is the likelihood of him playing then 14 games a season? I don't know, because of his injury record. But if you can get 8 games out of a season of him, then it's probably 8 games. That's probably the turning point for me, I think. If you can get 8 games out of Faletau, that I'd be tempted to keep him. But anything less than that, I don't see that it is value for money, sadly.
I don't envy whoever's making the decision, Jockey or Dicky or whatever, because it's a decision that's only ever going to be reviewed with hindsight as well. So whichever way you go, you're stuffed. I reckon if you canvass the entire Cardiff supporter base at the moment, you'd probably end up 50-50 on probably people keeping him or staying him. And if you can talk yourself in or out of any decision with it, because he doesn't play much, a bit injury if he's getting picked for Wales, but then he's a quality player, and the picture of him training this week, it's Lucas De La Rua who stood right behind him, and you just think, if you're Lucas De La Rua, I probably wouldn't even train. I think I'd just sit and watch Faletau, because you probably improve as a player more that way. So there's the pros and cons list is mad, and there is no right decision. I don't think. You just got to the powers that be have got to take it as is, and obviously if so where he is lives near my grand now. He's only recently moved there. This is quite a nice house apparently, and they've done a lot of work on it, so it doesn't strike me as somewhere they'll be moving away from imminently if he doesn't stay in Wales. So yeah, I don't know it. Obviously, if he is contracted for next year, and we can't really force him out anyway. If we didn't want to keep him, so I think he'll stay. I think we'll have another year out of him, maybe see where we are then following summer. And if we do get rid of Tamani, well, not get rid, that's a bit harsh, but if Tamani does leave, then the thing about Faletau as well is that massive commercially must be a big old pull for sponsors and all that sort of stuff. So
sorry, I was just going to jump in. The other one we sort of touched on it, but leadership in terms of just that we've mentioned several times, Harley, haven't we? The leadership on the pitch and that last 20 minutes and knowing how to see out a game. And Turnbull's leaving. There's a couple of other names there as well that are leaving with experience. Thomas, as we mentioned as well, and it's going to be one where there's going to be a hole in terms of the leadership going forward. So you probably want to keep at least one of the experienced lads in there. So hopefully there's I can understand wanting to keep Faletau, even if it's for 12 months, 24 months, just to keep him in there and help this young group through.
just the other back rows quickly. Young would be great if he stayed. Wouldn't blame him at all if he left, though. If I think from a Cardiff point of view, absolutely keep him. But if he says, "Look, I'm obviously not getting in the Wales squad, so I'm heading off elsewhere," then fair enough, really. Both them very injury prone still, but like still a quality player when he is fit. So I imagine he stays. Ellis Jenkins, question mark over his future. Sort of persisting rumours about whether he's going to call it a day at the end of this season. So that sevens wise, I'd just add William Bradley on the end of that as well, who is just been ravaged by injuries. Has actually looked pretty good when he's been playing, I thought, particularly for the Rags. But sort of Jamie Hill-esque, if you get that many injuries in that years, is it? I wonder if it might be a handshake there. Steph Thomas of Wales Online linked us with Dan Thomas the other day, the Bristol flanker. So we might be looking for another open side. And I know the comments will be, open side RFC, they are coming back. But, it is an attritional position and you do need depth and quality there. So if Dan Thomas was to come back, I think that'd be a handy sign in.
Very much so.
Blind side, I think, is pretty solid. Shane Lewis-Hughes, Ben Donnell, Lucas De La Rua to come through.
Alex Mann.
Yes, yeah.
Who is
Alex Mann as well, that guy.
Get him.
Big Mac then staying as well at 8. So I think we're looking pretty solid there. Alan Lawrence is an interesting one. Signed short deal coming back. I think he's always looked pretty good when he's played. Obviously doesn't play a massive amount. If there's a bit of money there, probably worth as a backup option in the squad.
Played really well the other week when he came on early for Tamani.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I was thinking
didn't.
I was going to say, if we're looking at getting, trying to save some money by shifting Tamani and and if Faletau's getting close to calling it a day as well, because maybe he's fed up with all the injuries.
Yeah.
You don't know. Actually, Alan Lawrence wouldn't be a bad shout because he's not in danger of going to an international squad. Perfectly adequate player at this level. Great backup for Mackenzie Martin, so we're not putting too much pressure on a young lad. Probably could do a job at 6 as well if we needed.
Yeah, I was wondering if he could slot in second row even. I played there a bit, Wales under 20s and stuff, if you needed him to. He's a bit of a bulky lad. Not a line-out option, but same as Shane and Lewis-Hughes a little bit, could just slot in if needed, backup one.
Oh, yeah, I'd stick with Shane Lewis-Hughes and Donald's.
Oh, yeah, he'd be down my list. To be honest.
It's it's a bit like when Faletau went in the second row and it just was wrong.
But I think pretty solid. We got obviously a never-ending line of players coming through. Evan Rees has looked pretty good for the Rags, coming out of the under-18 setup this season as well. So scrum half looking a bit light there. Obviously Thomas is off. Jamie Hill's already left. So Bevan is the only confirmed 9 for next season. I think the suggestion is that we've signed somebody from South Africa, not a Springbok, but don't know exactly who it is. I imagine Aubrey probably stays as third choice. I think just on a body basis, which isn't ideal, but sort of where we are.
I'd personally rather see Bertrand be given.
My
But
thing about Super Rugby, not Super Rugby Championship players, is that they miss this. They don't have an off season ever. They play the summer internationals and then they go straight into the Rugby Championship, which I think finishes on the same weekend that the URC starts next season. So I suppose my question is he not played much for the Dragons because he's injury prone because he never gets any time off?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, that does back it. Sorry, I can't remember who was it. One of the people when I put out the questions about what mentioning what we're doing today was asking about Bertrand, saying like, why hasn't he been playing much for Dragons? And the answer was he got a really bad injury in the World Cup semi-final, and
Yeah.
basically, and then that's him. Then if you are knackered, I think it's part of the reason what shortened players like Sam Warburton and Josh Navidi's careers is, and speaking of like Faletau, plays a week for Cardiff. Right, oh, he's fit. Right, let's get him out for Wales. Right, oh, he's crocked again. Right, as soon as he's fit. I mean, I do think it is an issue with rugby, and I think with the wage cap going down and squad sizes getting even more stressed, it's going to be something we see a lot more, which is really not ideal.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other one that's been rumoured, obviously, for and scrum half is Kieran, isn't it? Hardy.
I think it's pretty much done deal. He's going to Ospreys, though. To be honest,
I don't know what to say on that. I
saw the journalist eyebrow raise there.
Sorry, it was a journalist eyebrow raise in terms of I'm surprised at that one because I personally think the three scrum halves for Ospreys have been doing really well. That was that genuinely not a look of knowing. It was a look of I've been really impressed with Luke Davis and particularly I think Rubens played brilliantly this season.
I argue Rubens probably only behind Thomas as best scrum half played in Wales.
On form, yeah.
Yeah, comfortably.
I actually was quite surprised that Cowdell and Hardy both made it into the squad because that's one thing. I mean, we'll get on to, that's a conversation another time, but I do feel like Wales need to stop picking multiple people from the same position from one club region, particularly with how strange things are. And if the two best of a position are in one club, you're going to have to sort of maybe do an IRFU thing of, nope, you go over there now.
Yeah,
you're both playing first choice.
I just personally feel that that's why I'm surprised. But I thought Hardy coming to Cardiff made sense on paper. I don't know what the stumbling block has been, but on paper that one seems to make sense to me completely. So if that has fallen through, it's a bit of a shame for all, I think.
Yeah, I do think we could do with another real experienced 9 in there. It'd be interesting to see if and who is coming in because.
Do you know what Aled Davis's contract situation is? Because obviously he's not being favoured so much for salaries. And actually, when he does play for him, he looks really good.
I think Steph Thomas.
I've always rated Aled Davis.
Steph Thomas briefly mentioned Stephen Varney as well from Gloucester as a name, but I don't think that. I think that was quashed relatively quickly. But I assume if he goes anyway, he goes to Italy, as sort of all of the Italian internationals end up invariably playing for Benetton at some point.
Yeah. Unless Steph knows something big, I'd be stunned on that one.
Yeah. But yeah, we definitely need someone in. Fortunately, the other halfback position, fly half, is pretty solid next season. Obviously, Sheedy's coming back to be will still be there. Arwell, Robson, I assume he's probably signed on a 2-year deal when he came back in, probably in same as someone like Dav Hughes, not a huge amount of money he was on. But I think he's a solid enough third choice / rags player. And then Harry Wild in the academy, I think he's got another year at under 20s next year. So I suspect he'll probably play mostly for them and the rags, but wouldn't surprise me if he had he picked up a few injuries here and there, got injured at the start of the season and then with the 20s as well. If he had a real good run in that first EDC block and then through the 20s in the under 26 nations, that we see him sort of flicking in and out of first team squads towards the back end of next season because I haven't seen a huge amount of him to make a real like proper assessment, but the way he passes the ball is really nice. It's a real flat fizz to it, brings people onto the ball at pace outside him. Looks a very Cardiff fly half in that sense. I think the next big debate point then is centre, where there are no greens at the moment. I imagine Ben Thomas is staying. He was another one who signed a contract last summer. We haven't heard that he's been linked anywhere else, and the form that he's in, I imagine people would be interested. Obviously, Mason Grady, we wait for a decision still, either way. Being hunted by every club in Europe, probably in the Southern Hemisphere as well, because why wouldn't you want Mason Grady on your team at the moment? And then the question marks are Lilo, Halaholo. I've put Millard in there as a centre. He's pretty much a winger full-time these days. But particularly Halaholo, noticed he started a side business this week of sort of doing one-to-one skill stuff and been doing bits with the academy. Would you keep him on, or is it time to shake hands, and if he's got a good deal elsewhere, say go and enjoy that for a year or two?
Yeah, I think it's, as much as I love Halahola, I feel like after his last big injury, I just don't think he's quite got the same spot. He certainly hasn't got the pace he did before, and it's not. I don't think he's has it, and certainly if we need him as an option for 13 as well, I just don't think he. I think he does. He has been struggling a lot in that channel this season, and I absolutely love him. And if he is getting this role with the academy or doing private coaching stuff, good on my, really great. Actually, I think with Lilo as well, I'd actually quite like to see him involved in the academy if we are expanding. Because the thing, 13, there are very few 13s in Wales anyway. And I find Ray was probably one of the best defensively, after peak Foxy. And, the things that younger centres, like a Stefan Emmanuel can learn from him would be great. Rumours are, I don't think next season, but season after we might get Max Llewellyn, and then are you thinking maybe we keep one of them as a stopgap? But yeah, I think by all counts, said Thomas and Grady are two. Talking about with Teddy Williams, they seem players who Shearer wants to build his squad around. So I think they're the players who they are going to bend over backwards and try and get that. Obviously, Grady's stock has risen slightly now. He is he's a regular member of the matchday 23 for Wales. But I'd say he's worth it, just because that pace and power is very hard to come by.
Yeah, I think Grady is a must. And if it doesn't work out, then I think there's a few things to really look at. Look, Halaholo, I personally think the original question Dan asked was if he gets offered a deal, or if he gets offered a deal by someone else, I think he'd be a really well-paying deal. I'd be surprised if he didn't have to seriously consider it. The fact of the matter is, like we mentioned with a few of the other players, he's got roots here, and I don't think he wants to leave Cardiff, which is really lovely to see. Same with Lilo. But look, it's one of those, isn't it? In terms of actual playing ability now, look, you're not going to build your squad around them for the future. Is Steph Emmanuel ready right now? Maybe not. Be really interesting to see if we can get, even for a short period of time, a Louis Hennessy in, just to get another young centre in there, in and around. You really want an experienced centre in there as well, whether that be a Lilo or a Halaholo. But I don't know if you're going to get both, as well. I don't know if you're going to get either. So if you can't get either of those, I think you need an experienced head in around those two youngsters. Because Ben Thomas and Grady, well, less so Ben perhaps now, but especially Grady is still a youngster, and Steph Emmanuel to bring through as well. And I think we've seen this season that you need to have 5 or 6 options at centre and wing, because we've been I think Cardiff have been lucky this season with players that have been available. Halaholo coming back, obviously Max Clark coming in on a loan, but not but then forced to play Grady and Millard on the wings. meant they are a bit thinner in the centres, and I think that's a thing for the future, that they need a bit more strength and depth in that position, and that needs you want a clubman, a guy who's just going to be there week in, week out, that isn't going to get called up by international. A guy like Lilo has been for several years. A guy like a Garen Smith was before him, or those sort of guys who are going to churn out 7, or in the case of Lilo, a 9 out of 10 almost every week. But they need those guys that are going to be there every week in, week out, and perform, and just be able to perform a job when called upon, and also perform job across that centre to wing role, really, not just be. Millard's done it very well, but if Millard gets injured, who fills in that role aside from him?
It's an interesting one, centre. Just to throw a name in there, there has been a suggestion that we signed the centre from South Africa. Neil Fissler of Rugby Pass now linked us to. Here we go. It's going to test my South African pronunciation. Wandisile Similani, who
that would be a coup.
He was at Lions, went to the Bulls, played a lot last season, hasn't played so much this season. I think is just on a short-term deal at Stormers at the moment, but he's an out-and-out 13.
So good out-and-out 13.
Yeah, so if we picked him up with Grady, stay in, and then Ben Thomas at 12 with Beetham as a backup potentially there. Steph Emmanuel coming through the system. Chap who played for the Met and briefly for the under-20s this season, whose name has just evaded me. Ethan. Yes. Something. Elijah Evans. That was it. Elijah Evans is coming through the academy as well. Has played a lot at 13 for the Met this season and looked pretty good in the 20s win over Italy as well. Hopefully we'll see him play Junior World Championship this summer. So it's not looking too bad. I think maybe like Tamani, Halaholo's one where if you get Grady in and you get your new sign in and you ensure your youngsters are contracted, then if there's a bit of money left and he wants to stay and he has an offer elsewhere, then you say, no worries, mate, and do your help out with the academy coaching and stuff as well. Certainly not a bad thing to keep them around. Back three then.
Just before we go back three, sorry, just want to say, because we did bring up Max Clark as he's currently on a short-term loan.
Yeah.
I actually, as a sort of squad player, actually, I think it'd be quite, keeping hold of him wouldn't be, because he's not going to be expensive. When he has played, I thought he's actually looked really good. I think he's been really assured in that 13 jersey.
I think the big thing for Max Clark is why would he stay in Wales? I think he might look at it and think, I'm probably not going to get in that look in for Wales now. So he might think, why not go elsewhere? I don't know what his contract situation is at the Dragons. That's what I should say first of all. But if he is out of contract there as well, I think if I were him, I'd be looking elsewhere. But then he's probably not got many options in England because of the lack of clubs now compared to where the situation he left when he left. So you're probably looking at Pro D2. You're him if he wants to go out there, and he might not.
One good thing for him is because he's not been captured by any nation, he's English qualified, and that is becoming a bit more like gold. That's like you're seeing a lot of players like Scarlett Fever talking about, like, why was that like Hepburn? He's been rumoured to go to there. Why is he leaving Chiefs? And it's because they're only allowed so many non-English players, and Baxter's really wants to build the youth out. Hepburn's on the older side. He wants to keep Chunza, Jenkins, Hawke, and and then there you go. That's a 3 years starting 15 already. No much qualified. Plus the likes of Rustima. It's, although I think he is English qualified. I think he's English. No, because I thought he'd come from one of the Australian Super Rugby teams. I think actually he's from England. But that's a big digression. But again, that might make it a little bit more attractive. Maybe he likes the club. Who there's a hope. But anyway, yeah, that's time to go on. Let's go on to back three.
Yeah, back three, I think fullback sorted. Win it, obviously, your starter, signed a new deal. Beetham there, signs a new deal. Matty Young, I noticed he was in the pictures training with the first team this week. So wing is the interesting one, I think. You've got Gabe Hamer-Webb is coming back. Seems to be here at the moment. I don't know whether he's registered or not. He's certainly training. You got Tom Bowen, coming back academy-wise. And then you've got 4 players there in Josh Adams. Well, I'd say 5, actually. I'd put Josh Adams, Owen Lane, Theo Cabango, Aled Summerhill, and Harry Millard. 5 Welsh qualified wingers. Do we need that many? I suppose is the question. That if anyone can see the graphic, other than back row, back 3 is the longest list by quite a long way. In a time of cost-saving exercise, that seems to me to be an oversaturated area of the squad.
Well, I mean, if you look, first of all, if you look at, sorry, Carwyn, if you look at the back 3 injuries we've had this season, which Carwyn alluded to, yes, we do need that many. The question is do we have a look at, do we look at someone like Owen Lane who picks up niggles every so often? And, Theo Cabango, who is unbelievably brilliant whenever he's playing, but again, he's been struggling with, he's been picking up one long-term injury after another, and it's that. Are we going to be harsh? Do we think they're over it? Can we get through? Josh Adams, it's the same question with Faletau. Are we getting our money's worth from him? I mean, I'd argue with his try scoring record, yes, but he almost breaks the mold of that Welsh player thing. But I'd say I think we definitely need at least 4 wings. Just having 2 full sets, because then you can always have a fullback coming across.
I think,
and then you.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think it really depends on what's going on with Lilo, doesn't it? Surely, because if Lilo's your starting 13, then you can put Grady or Millard on the wings. But if you don't have Lilo there, you need both of them to cover 13. So then you need the extra wing cover. And personally, I think Theo Cabango has to stay. I think he is part of the Cardiff current and future. He's a brilliant talent. Really needs to be there long term, in my opinion. Josh Adams contracted to 2025 per Wales Online article last year. I know he's always rumoured to go to Lyon or one of those clubs, but I don't think that's a move he's hankering over, from what I understand. I think that's one that he's been rumoured to, and in fairness, if he has been exploring the option, fair enough, but I don't think he's like desperate to leave. And then Owen Lane, it seems almost baffling that we're discussing Owen Lane leaving, because a couple of seasons that would have been, oh no, Owen Lane has to stay. I think all 4 of those, I really like Summerhill as well. Sorry, I should have added that. I think he's one of the just a brilliant finisher when he plays, absolutely brilliant finisher. So I think all 4 are really good options that would be good to keep around. With Gabriel Hamer-Webb coming in, I do get the point of, are all 4 staying around? I think if Hamer-Webb, I think if Hamer-Webb and Tom Bowen weren't coming in, I'd think all 4 were staying. But now I am thinking one is on his way out, if not more. But look, I think Hamer-Webb is a brilliant addition as well. That's the other thing I'd say. Like, I think he went up and played 1 game for Northampton and scored. And I would also say I could possibly score for Northampton the way they play rugby. But the big thing on that is he's played brilliantly for Cardiff when he was at the club. So I'm excited for him in the future. But yeah, it does seem like, as Dan suggested, that one of those 4 will likely leave because of the signings of Tom Bowen and Hamer-Webb, and with Millard looking like they think he's a winger now, if he is extended his contract, because I think it was a short year contract, wasn't it? Yeah. So whether or not he gets given another year on top, which I would hasten to say he deserves on his performances.
There's tough decisions to be made in the winger section, certainly, because they're all good players. You wouldn't mind any of them in the squad, but I think on their day they're all great finishers. They've got slightly different traits here and there, like Summerhill and Millard, the sort of out and out pace. Lane's a bit more physical. Cabango's step in and his pace as well. But it's age profile, which is interesting, because in my mind, all of the players that we've mentioned there are sort of 23, 24, but just having a look now, Summerhill's going to turn 30 next year, which is mad. Like, makes me feel old. He's turning 30. Millard will be 28 at the start of next season. Lane will be 27. And then I think maybe the question from some will be, well, why are we signing Hamer-Webb then? But he's 23 going to be 24 at the start of next season, and that's probably what they're seeing is ceiling and the sort of ability to grow with the team. Whereas Summerhill and Lane, they're at their ceiling now. Is the thing. They're not going to get better. They're as good as they're ever going to be. So some tough.
Cynic in me says Gabriel Hyman-Webb's also Welsh qualified is the other element.
That's certainly in there as well. There's some payments elements from the WRU there, certainly, but yeah, I think this is maybe where we are now in Welsh rugby, and maybe where we should have been for a couple of years. But you have to make decisions about players once they get to 25, 26, certainly, about whether they are adding value or whether you're just keeping them because you're just used to them being around. And as good players as they are, wing is a position where Josh Adams is a top quality player, but then do you need to be carrying somebody in that middle wage band at wing where your type 5 is where games are just won and lost now, basically, especially in Northern Hemisphere winters. So that's the consideration, and is why I think I agree with Carolyn. We'll see probably 2 of those depart this summer, I would have thought.
Well, I say on that though, you say you not to pick words, but you say you've got to look at it and think, are these players who are 25, 26, but also getting older, are they still adding value? I don't look at any name in that, however many names that is, 20, 30 odd names, and think they're not adding value to the club. I think that does say something about, there's not one of those names I'm looking at and thinking they're not going to add. You could say Josh Turnbull perhaps isn't the player he used to be, perhaps doesn't have the legs he used to be, but he's been adding much value as a leader. And there's players all across that I think have been adding value this season as a player in the clubs and for the region. So I think there's a lot to be said about that, by the way. But there are those that add more value than others.
That's the thing,
forward. Yeah.
that is it. That's the tricky thing. Is it's about who's like comparing player to player who's adding more value. I don't disagree. I think we've got the squad into quite a nice place actually. We've removed a couple over the last few years who definitely weren't adding any value, and no names, and they look like a really tight group. They play for each other. They play for the coaches. It is just, I think supporters do need to bear in mind that professional rugby is very cutthroat, particularly in Wales at the moment. So we are going to lose some players who, on the face of it, will be like, "Wow, I didn't expect them to leave," or maybe on a "what the fuck, where are they going" type thing. But it's just the reality of where we are, and I think particularly at wing, if an Owen Lane was to leave this summer, it would be a shocking moment, but would probably be the right decision from the club.
This is fantastic chat. We might end up having a tail us over to next week. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, and the Ospreys boys are getting into me because they've got
they haven't got anything on this weekend.
Can I just say for YouTube viewers, it is worth rewinding the end of me and Dan talking just to see Harley start to fidget. I could see it, and I was so tempted to jump in to be like, "Well, this other point I want to make, Dan."
And anyway, thank you to my co-hosts Carwyn and Dan. Thank you all for listening. We will catch you next week. Bye-bye.